The new MacBook Pro is finally here. For the first time, a MacBook Pro actually is a pro. I mean, guys, this thing is a beast. But the question a lot of musicians and producers and even songwriters are wondering, is this for me? In this video, I'm gonna try to answer that question. And if it's not for you, what do I recommend as an alternative? And if it is for you, well, what configuration should you get? Make sure to stick around to the end, because if anybody suggests this laptop is for you, you probably shouldn't buy it now. Before we figure out whether the computer is for you, we need to first understand there's 4 key specs that we care about within a laptop as musicians. There's the CPU, the RAM, how fast the hard drive is, and then in some cases, the GPU. In simple terms, the CPU is in charge of processing power. The more cores, the more better. So that means if you have a 4-core computer, you could think about it as 4 people working on a project, versus if you have an 8-core, that's 8 people working on a project. So the more cores, the better. The RAM stands for random access memory. It allows you to run multiple programs at once or open multiple tracks. So let's say you're doing something like Hans Zimmer, where you're scoring for film. More likely you're gonna have so many tracks, and so you need a bigger RAM space. Whereas if you're just maybe working on a guitar track and then one vocal track, RAM may not be so much of a big deal for you. And in another example, let's say you have your browser open, your music software open, you got screen recording open. You see, these are a lot of apps open in the background. Well, you need more RAM for that. When it comes to the hard drive, you should only be looking at SSD, which stands for solid state drive. It has crazy fast read and write speeds, so you're not sitting there waiting for things to load from your hard drive. It's literally at a click of a button, things open up quick. The last one is the GPU, which is the graphics card. It's responsible for the graphics from your computer. So when you're making music, the meters that are flowing on the mixing channel, the audio that's going, anything graphical, that's basically your graphics card. So who is this laptop for? If you're doing light production and you're using plugins that aren't CPU heavy, this more likely is overkill for you. 20-30 tracks of just maybe samples, or say you have 5 tracks are dedicated for music and then the rest 20, 30 or 40 tracks are all vocals. Well, it really doesn't matter so much since you're not doing a lot of processing on it. If you're doing light editing like we talked about, then you could just go with last year's MacBook Pros. They have the 13-inch here, and the regular M1 chips are more than okay. I would recommend you do at least 16 gigs and a minimum of 512 gigs. I would prefer 1 terabyte, and then you should be done from there. Whereas if you're an advanced user where you have hundreds of tracks like scoring, or you even have just 30 tracks but you have maybe Serum on all channels, and then you have another CPU hogger, and just a bunch of plugins in there, and we all know how crazy that could get. When you hit the space bar, your computer is basically choking. For sure then, this laptop will be for you. If you're doing the more advanced production, we're faced with a decision whether we want the M1 Pro chip or the M1 Max chip. Straight out the bat, you will see that they all run on 10 cores. Like we talked about, you could kind of think about it as 10 people working together to process your command. So what that means is there is no difference within the CPUs. The main difference would be on the RAM. If you do not need 64 gigabytes, then the Pros will be more than okay. But if you do need that additional 64 gig, then the Max is the way to go. So let's say you decide to go with the Pro, like we talked about, the cores would be the same. The GPU, the minimum is more than enough to run your music software, and I'll recommend you push it up to 32 gigabytes and then at least 1 terabyte, and that should be your total right there. On the other hand, if you decide to do the M1 Max like I'm doing, I would recommend pushing it to 64 gigabytes, at least 1 terabyte, and that should be your total right there. If the 16-inch is too big for you, keep in mind the 14-inch is also available. I know in the front page it only shows M1 Pro, but that's not true. The 14-inch also can do the M1 Max. All you need to do is go within the configuration, and you should be able to click Apple M1 Max, And this would also unlock the 64 gig unified memory if you want. If you have a previous laptop, you could gauge whether this laptop is for you. Like me, for example, I still have a 2017 MacBook Pro. It was maxed out at its time, but now it is incredibly slow. In a week, I'll probably get 4 to 5 crashes. My productions tend to be very heavy on the CPU, so I'm constantly fighting with my computer on just keeping up. I'll keep getting CPU overload messages, and then I'll increase my buffer size, and guess what happens when you increase your buffer size? Huge lag. You're pressing your keys and it's taking forever to play. So if you are going through that, then yes, this laptop is a no-brainer. You just have to get on it. Should you place your order now? Yes and no. Yes, you should buy it if you have the extra cash, or you just need a laptop right now, then sure, buy it. No, if you already have an existing laptop, as bad as whatever you have is, it's best to kind of stick around with that. Why is that? Because at the time of recording this video, that means not a lot of music software and plugin companies have caught up. How long do we have to wait? We don't know. The Apple M1 chips came out over a year ago, and still not all music plugins are compatible. You buy the new laptop now, you're gonna get a lot of error messages if you open old project files that it's not compatible yet. So we have to wait till the music softwares have caught up to the new Apple chips, and then we could place our order for the laptop. If this video helped in some way towards your decision, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next video.